Now I want to show you some pictures from Gaza I've seen on no other TV station. It's bizarre how the West is blaming Israel more than Hamas for the war and the suffering in Gaza, which is caused by the Hamas slaughter of 1,200 Israelis on October 7, plus kidnapping 250 hostages, plus, and Hamas's promise to do it again and again. American Vice President Kamala Harris this week made clear she thought Israel was starving the people of Gaza, which is ruled by Hamas.
And the Israeli government must do more to significantly increase the flow of aid. No excuses. They must open new border crossings. They must not impose any unnecessary restrictions on the delivery of aid.
But two things about that. First, it's Hamas which just turned down a ceasefire deal backed by the US, where it releases the remaining Israeli hostages. It's held now for 5 months. Second, Israel is letting trucks of aid go into Gaza. This is the convoy yesterday, one of them, with no restrictions, say the Israelis, that's what they claim, other than inspections for possible weapons and so on, which might help to explain these pictures you won't have seen. Now, caution, these are pictures posted by the Israeli Army's Kogat unit, which works with civilians in Gaza and the West Bank. You might say it's propaganda, but this is a market in central Gaza, it says, a couple of weeks ago. I'm certainly not denying there are pockets of real hunger in Gaza, by the way, especially in the north. But look here, this is a market now in Rafah, in the south of Gaza, that this same Israeli unit says was shot just 4 days ago, this footage. Again, caution, it says it's genuine as far as I can tell from the online responses. For instance, there is no proof that it's fake or dated, old. You see people wearing winter clothes appropriate for this time of year. You see selling tomatoes that are in season now. It's very different, isn't it, from the picture you've been given of hunger and ruins everywhere by Israeli carpet bombing, allegedly. Although again, yes, there is now also a tent city of refugees from the north of Gaza nearby Rafah. Now, I won't take Israeli footage as gospel. I checked other footage, of course. Here is an unverified TikTok video posted 2 days ago by a Gaza resident talking about the soft honey biscuits for sale down there. Here is another unverified TikTok video from a local of Gaza who's found beans for sale at about 60 cents a can. Here is someone at the market actually selling the free food aid now being dropped on Gaza, which is supposedly for the starving. And here is a report posted by news.com AU just last week about that market, the bakery, the vegetables and the tomatoes.
There's plenty of demand since almost 1.5 million Palestinians have moved to the town, fleeing the north of the Gaza Strip. Here, tomatoes are on sale for 4 shekels a kilo, up from their usual price of 1 shekel, but still reasonable given the circumstances.
So, yes, the food is short, it's expensive, a lot of things are unavailable. But all that said, Gaza City, the whole stretch of Gaza is 40 kilometres or so long, north to south. So if you're starving up at Gaza City in the north, maybe try moving a few kilometres to where there is food, if you can, expensive though that food is. And one last thing I don't see reported much at all anywhere, if there are hold-ups of food aid coming in, some of it, maybe a lot, is because of Hamas and the Palestinian people. Truck drivers taking in that food find their trucks being looted, find themselves attacked, stoned, bashed. Some are warning others not to go there.
يا جماعة ما حدش يخش جوه الفلسطينيين ما خلوش ولا العربية اللي هم كسروها وزي ما انتم شايفين كده العربيات اتكسرت ما عادش نافعة طوب من جوه خرم الظهرية وده دم السواق زي ما انتم شايفين الكابينة ما عادش نافعة.
The World Food Programme has reported the same. Multiple attempts by people trying to climb aboard the trucks, gunfire, Gaza City, complete chaos and violence, trucks looted, a truck driver beaten. All of which suggests that the deaths from this swarming of a convoy last week probably did include people run over or crushed or shot by gunmen, as well as some shot when they did approach Israeli tanks nearby. Conclusion, the picture in Gaza is much more complicated than the one you see reported. And remember that most reporters in Gaza have to be nice to the Hamas terrorists or else In fact, the BBC report on those deaths last week of that food convoy I showed quoted a supposed eyewitness who blamed the Israelis, of course, but now it turns out to have been an anti-Israeli activist working for an outlet funded by Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, which backs Hamas. And its Facebook page even seems to show him dining with a leader of the military wing of the Islamic Jihad terrorist group, Khalil al-Batini. Joining me is General Jack Keane, a retired four-star general who served as Vice Chief of Staff of the United States Army, is now chairman of the Institute for the Study of War. General Keane, thank you so much for your time. Why is Vice President Kamala Harris so hard on Israel when it's Hamas that started this war, it's Hamas that promises to keep slaughtering Jews, it's Hamas that's firing from behind civilians, and it's Hamas that's now refusing the latest ceasefire offer?
Yeah, well, I think what's happening in this country, there's a huge pressure on the Biden administration, you know, from the far left here, who are supporting the Palestinians and really are actually opposing Israel in the sense that they believe everything that's wrong that's happening in Gaza, particularly in terms of civilian suffering and civilian death, is all at the hands of the Israelis, and don't blame the Hamas for that at all. And that kind of political pressure, I think, is manifesting itself in the Biden administration, putting more and more pressure on the Israelis in terms of how they conduct operations. And certainly Kamala Harris, who usually as a vice president really doesn't speak out too much, just recently has been doing just that. And that's the motivation, I believe, behind what we're seeing.
Well, I'm not sure it's going to do any good. I was in Israel last week, General. I talked to leading politicians from both sides. I talked to the president, I talked to their top security people, the former head of their internal security. I saw everywhere an utter determination to fight until Hamas is destroyed, no matter what America says. Do you think that's a stupid position from Israel, or would you be advising the same if you were in the Israeli military?
No, that's absolutely what I've been saying since October the 7th. Let the Israelis run their military campaign that their national leadership in Israel has directed. And I think it's the right campaign in terms of destroying the effectiveness of Hamas. There's 6 battalions that are somewhat effective still in the Hamas organization out of 30. 4 of them are in the Rafah area, and 2 remaining, one in Han Yunis area in the south, and remnants of one up in Gaza City that they've been dealing with the 2 that are outside Rafah in the past few weeks. They haven't conducted the campaign in Rafah yet because they're attempting to move the civilians out of Rafah so they're not in the way, and also they're obviously in some kind of negotiations that have been stalled in terms of a ceasefire to release the hostages. But Israel has made the point, Andrew, despite the ceasefire, if that agreement is reached, it is temporary, hostages released, humanitarian aid provided, and then after that, Israel fully intends to go into Rafah to destroy the effectiveness of those remaining units, and it's likely where most of the principal leaders who are still alive are.
Bad news. Russia is now winning in the war in Ukraine, or at least it's pushing the Ukrainians back. It's got the upper hand in the battlefield, and the stakes have just got higher. French President Emmanuel Macron has been all over the shop, you know that. He now says European countries should stop being cowards and send troops to Ukraine to fight as well, to help the Ukrainians. And the head of Germany's Air Force was bugged and embarrassed by recordings of him saying British troops were already there.
Wenn es zum Beispiel darum geht, die Missionsplanung zu machen. Ich weiß, wie es die Engländer machen. Die machen es ja komplett im Reachback. Die haben auch ein paar Leute vor Ort. Das machen sie, die Franzosen nicht. Also sie QCen auf die Ukrainer beim Beladen des Scalp.
General Keane, How embarrassing was that call?
Well, I think NATO's got to get their act together and determine what it is they're doing. I really don't think they're all that serious about sending ground troops. I do believe the Ukrainians would more than welcome air power because certainly they don't have the kind of air power they will eventually get when the F-16s show up. In terms of the characterization of the war, here's how I would express it. Russia has some initiative and has been able to achieve momentum in taking in limited pieces of territory, principally around Avdiivka, where there's a salient there, and the Ukrainians withdrew, but the Russians suffered staggering casualties, and they were not able to exploit that success in restoring operational maneuver and being able to move through the penetration they achieved and take significant amount of territory. Why? Because the operation culminated and they lost the ability to maneuver any further. So what we're seeing is positional warfare. The Russians are not winning this war, but clearly the momentum is on their side. The Ukrainians are defending quite naturally because they're husbanding their resources. They know full well they've received no assistance in 2 months whatsoever. The Russians outgunned them 4-1 on artillery shells, and they're going to have a depletion of their air defense systems. And if we don't get something to them soon, we're going to see bombing of major cities in Ukraine in a successful bombing that we've not seen to date.
The Ukrainians have had a tremendous success in the Black Sea using drone ships or drone boats. It's just been extraordinary, some of the vision we've seen too. But has Germany, the head of their Air Force, landed Britain in it by revealing, and I presume he knows what he's talking about, in this bug call that British troops are already on the ground in Ukraine, training Ukrainians to fight? That is a big step up for British commitment in this war.
It certainly is, if that's a true story. Maybe their SAS are doing that kind of training. Obviously, that's a covert operation, not meant to be in the public domain. And revealing something like that is astounding. A NATO country revealing something on another NATO country, an allied partner, and shame on them for doing something like that, if this is a valid story.
Yes, I think Germany's effort in this war has been all over the shop as well. I mean, really, this has exposed some real weaknesses in Europe. But we shall see. I mean, they need to get their act into gear or Ukraine will be lost. General Jack Keane, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, great talking to you, Andrew. Thank you.